It was just another peaceful afternoon in York. Children were playing, laughter filled the air, and everything seemed normal. But in an instant, that sense of safety vanished. Katie had been enjoying her day, blissfully unaware that something terrible was about to unfold. One moment there was joy, and the next, silence. When the authorities arrived, the scene they encountered was heartbreaking. What had happened to Katie, and the most chilling question of all, why? Katie Ruff was born on January 16, 2009, in York, England. She was the beloved daughter of Paul and Alison Ruff, growing up in a large, loving family that included her 5 older siblings, 3 from her mother's first marriage to Craig Smith, and 2 from her father's previous relationship. As the youngest, Katie was adored by her family, including her grandparents, aunts, and uncles. She even had the joy of becoming an aunt herself when her older sister had a baby. Known for her infectious laughter and playful nature, Katie was described by those who knew her as kind, considerate, and always eager to help others. She had a deep love for music and showed remarkable talent in creative writing. According to her school principal, Katie's personality and skills made her well-loved among her peers and teachers. One of the most joyful moments of her childhood came when her parents, Paul and Alison, officially married on December 28, 2016, 7 years after her birth. Dressed in a beautiful silver gown, Katie played a special role as the flower girl at their wedding. Bright, intelligent, and surrounded by love, her future seemed filled with promise. Tragically, that future would never come to fruition. After the holiday season, which included the wedding and New Year's celebrations, life returned to normal for the Ruff family. In those early days of January, before school resumed, neighbors often saw Katie outside, full of life and energy. She loved playing outdoors, whether it was jumping on a trampoline, climbing trees, or drawing with chalk. When school restarted on January 9, 2017, Katie eagerly attended her classes and returned home to her mother's warm embrace at the end of the day. On that fateful afternoon, as she often did, Katie went to play at a nearby park less than 10 minutes from her home. At around 4:20 p.m., a neighbor spotted Katie laughing and playing with another girl who appeared slightly older. But just 17 minutes later, everything changed. The neighbor's husband, returning from work, encountered a distressed teenage girl covered in mud, frantically making a phone call. She appeared to be dialing emergency services, asking for help. Alarmed, the man immediately called his wife, who recognized the girl as the one who had been playing with Katie just moments earlier. He rushed to the park, where he made a horrific discovery. Katie was lying motionless on the ground, her face covered in blood. Desperately checking for a pulse, he found none. In shock, he ran back to his home, urging his wife to call for help. Conflicting reports emerged about what happened next. Some sources indicated that 17 minutes after the girls were last seen together, an anonymous caller contacted emergency services, stating that someone had died but providing no further details or location. Despite the lack of crucial information, authorities immediately launched an investigation to trace the origin of the call. Meanwhile, completely unaware of these unfolding events, Alison began to worry when she realized Katie had been gone for too long. Stepping outside, she expected to see her daughter playing nearby, but found no sign of her. Calling out for Katie produced no response. Growing increasingly anxious, she searched the immediate area, knowing that Katie never wandered far from home. 13 minutes after the mysterious emergency call, Alison placed her own call to report Katie missing. She informed authorities that she had not seen her daughter for the past 45 minutes and was deeply concerned. At the same time, law enforcement used cell phone tracking technology to pinpoint the location from which the earlier emergency call had been made. They soon zeroed in on the area and launched a frantic search. Tragically, their efforts led to the discovery of Katie's lifeless body in the park where she had been playing. Paul arrived at the scene, joining Allison in retracing Katie's usual route. As they neared the park, they noticed an unusual commotion. Rushing forward, they came upon a devastating sight: police officers and paramedics surrounding their daughter. Katie had sustained 2 deep wounds. Allison fell to the ground, cradling Katie in her arms, desperately holding on to her little girl in what would be their final embrace. Paul wanted to do the same, but officers had to separate them to allow emergency responders to perform CPR. Paramedics swiftly placed Katie into an ambulance and transported her to York Hospital. Sirens wailing as a police vehicle escorted Allison and Paul to be with their daughter. Tragically, their worst fears were confirmed when doctors informed them that, despite their best efforts, Katie could not be revived. At 5:45 p.m., the 7-year-old was pronounced dead. The immediate question was not just who was responsible, but why. Not only were Katie's devastated parents seeking answers, but the entire community was in shock. Investigators quickly identified the person responsible for this senseless crime: the same teenage girl who had been seen playing with Katie earlier that day. She was just 15 years old, and her appearance made it evident that she had been directly involved in the crime. In England, strict laws protect the identities of minors involved in criminal cases, preventing the media from disclosing her name. The horrifying news spread quickly, capturing the attention of the public and media alike. A tragedy of such magnitude could not remain unnoticed. Minutes after the incident, the area was swarming with reporters eager to capture images and gather information. While the suspect was already in custody, the investigation remained ongoing. The site of the incident was cordoned off for an extended period to preserve evidence and prevent contamination. Forensic teams meticulously combed through the scene, collecting anything that might be connected to the case. Their goal was not only to confirm the identity of the perpetrator, but also to establish the exact circumstances under which the fatal attack occurred. Authorities urged the public to come forward with any information, specifically requesting statements from anyone who had seen the girls that afternoon, whether playing together before the tragedy or in the aftermath. Katie's mother joined the plea on social media, asking that anyone who had noticed something unusual, no matter how insignificant it seemed, report it to the authorities. She emphasized that any detail, however small, could help bring clarity to what had happened. The devastating event deeply affected the local community, sparking an overwhelming response from residents who wished to pay tribute to Katie. Dozens of people visited the scene, leaving flowers, candles, and heartfelt messages for the little girl and her grieving family. Among the tributes, one card stood out, signed by Katie's grandparents, simply wishing her good night. This poignant gesture resonated widely, moving even high-ranking officials in the United Kingdom. 2 days later, the teenager's initial court hearing took place. The proceedings revealed chilling details about the case. Due to the emotional toll, Katie's parents were unable to attend, but her paternal grandparents and 2 of her siblings were present to face the person responsible for the crime. Strict privacy laws protecting minors meant that no images of the teenager were released. She was described as having long brown hair and wearing an oversized gray hoodie, flanked by 2 security officers and a representative from the juvenile offender team. She stood behind a glass partition, silent as her lawyer answered the judge's questions. The hearing lasted just 8 minutes, with some sources suggesting that the girl attended via video conference rather than in person. During the hearing, it was revealed that she had ended Katie's life by compressing her airway with a gloved hand. Once certain that the child was no longer breathing, she inflicted fatal wounds to Katie's throat and chest with a sharp object. Through her lawyer, the teenager admitted to the crime but pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Reports indicated that she had been struggling with mental illness for some time, though experts debated the exact diagnosis. Most professionals leaned toward schizophrenia. Evidence suggested that she had a history of self-harm and had even shared images of her injuries on social media, accompanied by messages hinting at her fragile mental state. Her fascination with horror stories took a darker turn following the sudden death of a close friend a year before the attack. She began self-inflicting injuries and developing disturbing thoughts, including ideas of ending her own life. Her obsession with death, science fiction, and conspiracy theories grew, leading her to believe that robots were living among humans in disguise, and even claiming that some of her own family members were artificial beings. As a result of her deteriorating mental state, she had been pulled out of school and placed under the care of mental health services. Following the hearing, the judge ordered that the teenager remain in custody under strict supervision. Beyond the legal proceedings, the case left an indelible mark on the community. In response, a local resident who had never met Katie's parents launched a fundraising campaign to support the grieving family. The community rallied together, raising an astonishing $32,000 to ensure that Katie's family could cover funeral expenses and take the time they needed to grieve without financial worries. Determined to personally thank the anonymous fundraiser, Paul eventually tracked them down to convey his appreciation. Once forensic examinations were complete, Katie's body was released to her family for burial. The funeral service took place at York Cathedral, the same place where she had been baptized and where she and her family regularly attended Mass. A horse-drawn carriage carried her small white casket, adorned with images from her favorite Dr. Seuss books. A farewell program distributed at the service featured a quote attributed to Dr. Seuss himself. "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." The farewell ceremony took place the following day, led by the Archbishop of York, who had spent the entire night beside Katie's casket in prayer, unwilling to leave her alone. More than 300 people attended the service, and as requested by the Ruff family, many children wore colorful ribbons to ensure that Katie's send-off was filled with light and joy. Even her mother wore one of those bright ribbons pinned to her chest. During an emotional eulogy, the family emphasized that they did not want to focus on the tragedy of her passing, but rather on the happiness Katie had brought to their lives during her short time on Earth. A few days later, on January 16th, what would have been Katie's 8th birthday, the community gathered again. This time, family, friends, and local residents released colorful balloons into the sky to honor her memory. That same day, a family-friendly fundraising event was held to collect donations for a memorial bench in Katie's name. The bench was eventually placed in the gardens of the York Museum, where a stained glass window was also dedicated to her. The window bore an inscription reflecting the lasting impact of her presence. "She left traces of light in our hearts, and though the world is imperfect, she made it a little brighter." In July 2017, the teenager who committed the crime, through her legal representation, formally pleaded guilty after reaching an agreement with the prosecution. The original charge of murder was dropped, and instead she was convicted of manslaughter due to diminished responsibility. However, an additional charge of possessing an offensive weapon was included during this hearing. Previously undisclosed details about the case came to light, confirming that Katie had died from asphyxiation caused by the teenager compressing her airway with a gloved hand. Shockingly, just minutes before the attack, the two had been playing together. Medical examiners determined that the knife wounds, one on her neck and another on her torso, were inflicted post-mortem. Investigators also revealed that the teenager had been contemplating taking someone's life for some time based on evidence found in her bedroom, including a stuffed Lion King toy that had been mutilated. Experts testified that the teenager had a history of severe depression alongside delusional thoughts, including the belief that some people were not truly human, but robots in disguise. At the time of the attack, she was diagnosed with a schizoid personality disorder and had killed Katie as part of a twisted attempt to confirm her delusions. A chilling note found at the scene read, "They are not human. A hearing was initially scheduled for September, during which the judge was expected to deliver the sentence. However, before making a final decision, he requested further psychiatric evaluations, extending the process by an additional 12 weeks. The judge even apologized to Katie's family for the delay, explaining that it was necessary to ensure the most appropriate course of action. Although the prosecution accepted the teenager's plea to the reduced charge of manslaughter, the court insisted on a thorough reassessment of her mental health. When the girl was informed of the extended evaluation period, she broke down in tears. During that hearing, the judge made it clear that all sentencing options remained on the table. Addressing the teenager directly, he stated that there was no dispute over the fact that she posed a significant risk not only to others, but to herself as well. Finally, on November 24th, the court reconvened. By then, the teenager had turned 16, and the judge handed down a life sentence with a minimum of 5 years to be served before eligibility for parole would be considered. While the sentencing marked the conclusion of the legal process, the grief endured by Katie's family and friends would never truly fade. This reality was reflected in a deeply personal way, as her parents had her name tattooed on their wrists, accompanied by words expressing that life would never be the same without her. The family later shared a heartfelt video on social media, not focusing on the tragedy of her death, but on the beauty of her life. It was a tribute to Katie's boundless curiosity, her love for her family, and her infectious joy. Her story resonated far beyond her hometown, with messages of sympathy and solidarity pouring in from around the world, including places as distant as the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. A close family friend compiled many of these messages into a video, which was gifted to Katie's parents as a reminder that even in their darkest moments, they were not alone. Though her time on Earth was tragically short, Katie left an indelible mark on those who knew her, and even on those who only learned of her story. Her case serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers that children can face, regardless of their background, social status, or circumstances. As for the troubled teenager whose mind had been consumed by delusions, her fate remains a subject of debate. Was justice truly served? Could this tragedy have been prevented? What do you think?